Single dad found an abandoned Bentley in a barn. Fix it and keep everything inside changed his life. The barn had not been opened in 26 years. The man who owned it was 81 years old and had not been able to open it himself since his hip gave out in 2019, and before that he had not opened it because there were things inside it he was not yet ready to look at. And before that, he had not opened it because time had passed in the way. Time passes when something is finished, and you are not ready for it to be finished, and the years had become a number that surprised him when he counted them. He called the number he had gotten from his neighbor on a Tuesday afternoon in February. The man who answered was 31 years old. His name was Noah Garrett. He was standing in his kitchen, making his daughter's dinner, and he had a dish towel over one shoulder and a 6-year-old named Ada sitting at the table behind him with a stuffed black dog named Wren, practicing her letters and periodically informing Wren of her progress. The old man's name was Walter Foss. He said there was a barn on his property in Chatham County. He said there was a car in it. He said he needed someone to go in first, because he could not go in himself, and because he did not want to send a stranger in alone. He said if the car could be made to run, the man who fixed it could keep it. He said there were other things inside, too. He said, fix it and keep everything inside. Noah Garrett set the dish towel on the counter. He looked at Ada. He looked at Wren. He said, I can be there Saturday. What Walter Foss did not tell him, what Walter Foss himself did not fully know, was what was inside that barn. What was inside that barn would not become clear until a Tuesday morning 6 weeks later, when Noah opened a wooden box that had been sitting behind the driver's seat of the car for 26 years and had never been meant for him at all. Keep listening. What's in the box changes everything. Stay with this one. His name was Noah Garrett, 31 years old. He had sand-colored hair and the kind of quiet that was not shyness. It was something more settled than shyness, more chosen. He lived in a rented house on the east side of Pittsboro, North Carolina, which was a small town with one main street and a courthouse and a diner. On the corner of Hillsborough Street that made biscuits that were the subject of regional consensus. He had a daughter named Ada. She was 6. She had his quietness and her mother's way of noticing things before other people noticed them, which had been one of the things Noah had loved most about Maya, and which was alive again in Ada every day, in ways that were sometimes beautiful, and sometimes just for a moment too much. And he had learned to let the moment pass and come out the other side. Maya had died when Ada was 3. A car accident on a wet road in November, 27 miles from home, and Noah had been at the shop when the call came, and he had sat down on the concrete floor of the shop, because sitting down was the only thing that made sense at that moment, and the floor was what was there. He had been sitting on the floor for 11 minutes when his neighbor Celia had called to say she had Ada, and Ada was fine. And Ada was eating crackers and watching a program about penguins. And did he need her to stay? He had said yes. He had sat on the floor a little longer. That had been 3 years ago. The shop was still there. It was a small operation, restoration and general repair, with a particular focus on British vehicles from the post-war period, which was a specialty that had found Noah rather than the other way around. It had found him at 22, when a man named Gerald Oakes had brought in a 1958 Austin Healey 106 that had been sitting in his garage for 9 years and that nobody in the county had wanted to touch, and Noah had touched it, and the touching had gone well. And Gerald Oakes had told 2 people, and those 2 people had told 3 more, and that was how a specialty developed. He ran the shop 6 days a week. On the 7th day, he did the things that the other 6 days did not leave room for. Ada's school things, the grocery run, the hour on Sunday afternoon when he and Ada and Wren sat on the back steps. And Ada told him everything that had happened in the week. In chronological order, while Wren listened with his dark button eyes and his patient black face. It was the best hour of Noah's week. It had been the best hour of his week for 2 years. Ever since Ada had started having enough words to fill an hour. Wren had been Ada's since she was 2. He was a stuffed black Labrador, soft, with a red collar that Ada had decided on herself. She had found the collar in a craft box and had looped it around Wren's neck with the seriousness of someone performing a ceremony. Wren went everywhere. Wren had been to the dentist. Wren had been to the hardware store. Wren had been to the shop on Saturdays when Ada came in with Noah. And on those Saturdays, Wren sat on the windowsill overlooking the bay, and Ada sat beside him and watched the work with the focused attention that was her nature. It was Celia who had given him Walter Foss's number. Celia was 63 and had lived next door to Noah for 4 years and had an opinion about most things and was usually right about them. She had mentioned, one evening over the back fence, that there was an old man on Lick Creek Road who had a barn with a car in it and who had been trying to find someone trustworthy to look at it for 6 months. She had looked at Noah when she said trustworthy in the way she said things she meant specifically. He had put the number in his pocket. He had called it on Tuesday. Walter Foss was 81 years old, and he lived in a white farmhouse at the end of a gravel lane in Chatham County that was flanked on both sides by trees that had been growing there since before Walter was born. He was a large man, once larger, with white hair and a cane he had used since the hip, and the particular bearing of someone who had done physical work for most of his life, and whose body had filed its objections in the last decade. He met Noah in the lane on Saturday morning at 9. Ada was in the truck with Wren, watching Walter with the calm attention she gave to new people. Walter looked at the truck. He looked at Ada through the window. He looked at Noah. "You brought your girl," he said. "She comes to work with me on Saturdays," Noah said. Walter looked at Ada again. Ada held up Wren. Something moved in Walter's face. It was not surprise. It was something that went deeper than surprise, the kind of movement that happens in old faces when they see something that connects to something else entirely. He looked at Wren for a long moment. "What's the dog's name?" he said. Ada said through the glass. Walter nodded slowly. He turned toward the barn without saying anything else. The barn was 80 yards behind the house, through a field that had gone to grass and then to something rougher. The door was a sliding door on a track, and the track had corroded, and Walter's neighbor had come twice with oil over the years. But the door had not budged. Noah brought a pry bar and a rubber mallet from the truck and spent 20 minutes working the track before the door moved. And then it moved all at once with a sound that was both mechanical and final. The sound of something that had been sealed giving way. The light came in. Dust moved in the light. The barn smelled of dry wood and old oil and something else. Paper, Noah thought, or fabric. Something that had been still for a very long time. The car was in the center of the barn. It was covered with a canvas tarp that had once been green, and was now the color of everything that had been sitting in the same place for 26 years. There were other things in the barn, wooden crates along the left wall, a workbench at the rear with tools hanging on pegboard, a shelf of glass jars, a rolled canvas leaning against the corner, 2 trunks with brass clasps. Noah looked at all of it. He looked at the tarp. He looked at Walter, who had come as far as the doorway and stopped there with his cane and his hand on the doorframe. "What is it?" Noah said. "Pull the tarp," Walter said. His voice was even. Not entirely even. Noah pulled the tarp. It was a 1956 Bentley S1 Continental, dark blue, not navy, darker than navy, the color of deep water at the edge of evening. The bodywork was by H.J. Mulliner, which meant it had been coach-built by hand in London for a specific person with specific requirements, and there were 331 of this body style ever made. And this was one of them. and it had been in this barn in Chatham County, North Carolina, for 26 years under a canvas tarp. And it was the most beautiful thing Noah Garrett had seen in a building in his professional life. He stood in front of it for a long time without speaking. Ada had come in behind him, silently, with Wren under her arm. She stood beside her father and looked at the car. "It's the color of nighttime," she said. "It is," Noah said. "Is it yours now?" she said. He looked at Walter, who was still in the doorway with the morning light behind him, and 26 years of whatever was in this barn in front of him. "That depends on whether I can fix it," Noah said. "You can fix it," Ada said. The same tone she always used for this kind of statement. Not encouragement, certainty. Walter Foss stood in the doorway and said nothing. His jaw moved slightly. He was looking at the car, or at a point near the car, or at something that was not in the barn at all, but that the barn contained anyway. "Fix it and keep everything inside," Walter said. "That was what I called you for. That's still what I'm asking." Noah looked at Walter. "Everything?" he said. "Everything," Walter said. He turned and walked back toward the house. He did not come back into the barn that morning. The Bentley S1 Continental had not been started since 1998. Noah knew this because there was a service record in the glove box, a small leather, bound notebook in which every fuel stop and service interval had been recorded in the same handwriting from 1956 to 1998. And then not at all, and the last entries was in October 1998 and 3 words: oil and filter. After that, nothing. The notebook stopped, and the car stopped, and the barn door closed, and 26 years had happened outside, while the Bentley sat in the dark. He spent the first Saturday doing only what the first day warranted: a full visual inspection, a documentation pass with his camera, a list of what needed assessment before anything was touched. He did not rush. He had learned in 9 years of working on old British cars that the first day was not for doing. It was for understanding, and understanding could not be hurried without a cost. Ada sat on one of the wooden crates along the left wall with Wren and watched. She had her small notebook. She kept a notebook because Noah kept a notebook, and she had decided at some point that notebooks were what serious people carried. And she drew the car in it, which was a drawing that captured the car's proportions better than it had any right to, and labeled it in her printing, Dad's New Bentley. On the second Saturday, Noah opened the bonnet. The straight-six engine was correct for the year. The 4 9-liter unit that Bentley had been using since the R-Type, refined for the S1. The engine bay was dry, which was good. No evidence of fluid intrusion. No significant corrosion on the visible surfaces. The rubber components were deteriorated in the way rubber deteriorated over decades. Cracked and stiffened, but not disintegrated. Replaceable. The fuel system would need full renewal. The brake hydraulics would need full renewal. The electrical system would need careful diagnosis before anything was energized. He made his list. It was a long list. It was not a discouraging list. It was a list that described a car that had been well maintained until it stopped being maintained, and that had been stored without malice, in conditions that were imperfect but not catastrophic, and that had been waiting, in the specific patience of mechanical things, for someone to come back. He called a man named Leonard Marsh on the way home. Leonard was 61, Birmingham-born, and ran a parts and technical advisory service for post-war British vehicles from a house in Chapel Hill that had a workshop attached and a meticulous memory. He was the person Noah called when he needed to be certain about things, and he had never led Noah wrong. An S1 Continental, Leonard said. H.J. Mulliner body? Flying spur configuration, Noah said. 4-door. A pause. How many miles? Leonard said. 61,412, Noah said. Per the service record, and I have the full service record. A longer pause. Noah, Leonard said. Do you know what an S1 Continental flying spur in verified low-mileage condition with a complete service record is worth at auction? I have an idea, Noah said. Somewhere between 400,000 and 800,000 pounds. Sterling, Leonard said, depending on condition and provenance. Noah drove for a moment without speaking. I need you to help me source the rubber, he said. I'll send you a list tomorrow, Leonard said. Noah. Yeah, Noah said. Who gave you this car? Leonard said. An old man named Walter Foss, Noah said. He hasn't been able to look at what's in that barn for 26 years. Leonard was quiet for a moment. Find out why, Leonard said, before you get too far in. Noah said goodnight. He drove the rest of the way home thinking about the service record in the glove box. The handwriting that had recorded every fuel stop and oil change from 1956 to 1998. The same handwriting for 42 years. And then nothing. He went back on a Wednesday evening, alone. Ada was at Celia's. He drove to the farmhouse and knocked on the door, and Walter answered in the way, of a man who had been expecting a knock and had been deciding for some time what he would say when it came. They sat in Walter's kitchen. Walter made coffee. The kitchen was the kitchen of a man who had been alone in it for a long time. Clean, spare, the particular orderliness of someone who had made peace with the space as it was. On the wall beside the door, there was a photograph in a frame. A man and a woman, young, standing in front of a dark blue car. The car was the Bentley. The man was Walter, recognizably 40 years younger. The woman was small, dark-haired, laughing at something outside the frame. My wife, Walter said. He set the coffee down. Eleanor. We bought the car in 1971. Second owner. She found it. She knew cars. Better than I did. She saw the listing in a magazine and she said, that's the one. And I said, that's too much money. And she said, Walter, that's the one. And she was always right about things like that, so I said, all right. He sat down. We drove it for 27 years. Every summer. We drove it to her sister's in Virginia every Thanksgiving. We drove it to the coast for our anniversary every September. It was her car more than mine, really. I just drove it. He was quiet. She died in October 1998, he said, 3 weeks after the last service record entry. Cancer. It had been moving fast for 6 months. He looked at his coffee. After that, I couldn't. I put the car in the barn and I closed the door and I just couldn't. He looked up at Noah. I'm 81 now. I don't have a lot of time to keep waiting. Noah sat with this. The other things in the barn, Noah said. The crates, the trunks. Walter nodded. Hers, he said. Things I put in there when I put the car in. I couldn't have them in the house, and I couldn't get rid of them, so they went in the barn. He looked at his hands. I'm asking you to take them, because I think they should go to someone who will look at them. Properly. I don't. I can't have a stranger come in and sort through her things, but a man who fixes something she loved. He stopped. He cleared his throat. A man who fixes something she loved can look at the rest. Noah looked at the photograph on the wall. Eleanor, laughing. The dark blue car behind her. I'll fix it, Noah said. I'll take good care of everything inside. Walter looked at him. I know, Walter said. That's why I called the number. The work took 11 weeks. Not because any single problem was insurmountable, but because Noah did not cut the corners that would have reduced the time. The fuel system was complete renewal. Tank, lines, pump, carburetors rebuilt from correct kits that Leonard sourced from a supplier in Coventry. The brake system was the same. Full hydraulic renewal, new cylinders, new lines, shoes relined to correct specification. The rubber was all new. The electrical system took 3 weeks alone. Noah tested every circuit individually and corrected every fault individually, and did not sign off on any of it until it behaved as designed. Ada came to the shop on most Saturdays. She sat on the wooden crate he had brought from the barn. He had brought the crate because Ada had claimed it on the first day, and he had decided that this was therefore Ada's crate, with Wren on her lap, and she watched the Bentley come back. She watched the engine bay go from dry and dormant to cleaned and detailed. She watched the new rubber go in. She watched the brake system confirm. She watched the electrical tests, which she found particularly interesting because of the meter, which she asked about, until Noah explained it. And then she explained it to Ren with a precision that suggested she had understood it completely. On the 8th week, Noah opened the trunks. He had waited. He had left them stacked against the wall of the shop, and he had worked us around them, and he had not rushed the opening because the opening was not his to rush. But by the 8th week, with the car close to done, he understood that looking at what was inside was part of finishing the job. Walter had asked him to look properly. He was going to look properly. The first trunk contained clothes, folded carefully. A woman's clothes, post-war in style, quality fabric, a wool coat in bottle green, 2 silk scarves, a pair of driving gloves in tan leather, very small hands, slightly worn at the palm in the way driving gloves wear when they have been used. Noah set the gloves on the workbench. He looked at them for a long time. The second trunk contained books, letters in bundled stacks, and at the bottom, wrapped in brown paper and tied with kitchen string, a flat rectangular package. He set it on the workbench beside the gloves. He looked at Ada. "Should I open it?" he said. Ada looked at the package. She looked at Shun. She looked back at Noah. "Eleanor would want you to," she said. He looked at her. She was 6 years old. She said it the way she said things she was certain of, which was the same way she said everything else. He opened it. Inside the brown paper was a painting. Small, maybe 30 centimeters by 40, oil on board, a landscape, rolling countryside, late summer light. In the foreground, a dark blue car on a road, seen from behind, driving away into the painting. The brushwork was specific and confident. In the lower right corner, signed in paint, E. Foss, 1974. Eleanor had painted it. Eleanor had painted her own car on a road in England, driving away in 1974. Noah sat with the painting for a long time. He sat with it in the quiet of the shop, with the Bentley in the center of the bay and the smell of oil and clean metal, and Ada watching from the crate with Ren and the driving gloves on the workbench beside him, and all 11 weeks of the work behind him, and this painting in his hands. He thought about Maya. He thought about the things of hers he had kept, and the things he had not been able to keep, and the things he had put in boxes and closed, and the boxes he had opened since, and the ones he had not opened yet. He thought about a wooden box in the bedroom closet that had Maya's handwriting on the lid, and that he had not opened in 3 years. He thought about what Walter had carried for 26 years, and what he himself had been carrying for 3, and whether there was a difference in kind or only in time. There was the sound of Ada climbing off the crate. She came to him. She leaned against his arm and looked at the painting. "She painted it," Ada said. "She did," he said. Ada studied it. She was very still. "She painted the car going away," Ada said. "But in the painting it never goes away. It just keeps going." Noah looked at the painting. He looked at it for a long time. "Yeah," he said. "That's right." He called Walter that evening. He told him about the painting. He described it specifically. The landscape, the light, the dark blue car on the road, Eleanor's signature in the corner. He said it carefully, the way you say things to someone for whom they are not information but something older. Walter was quiet for a long time. "She painted that the summer we drove through the Cotswolds," he said. 1974. She always had her paints in the boot. She always had her paints. A pause. "I forgot about that painting. I thought I knew everything she put in those trunks." "It's well preserved," Noah said. The paper kept it dry. Walter was quiet again. "I want you to keep it," Walter said, "with the car and the rest. I want it to go to someone who will look at it." Noah looked at the painting on the workbench, at the dark blue car driving into the summer light, at E. Foss, 1974 in the corner. "I'll look at it," he said. "I know you will," Walter said. "There was a man named Cameron Hale. who ran a classic vehicle brokerage from offices in Charlotte, and who had been in the business for 22 years, and who had, over those years, developed a particular instinct for the moment when a significant car entered circulation. He had learned about the Bentley from a contact at Leonard's parts operation, and he had called Noah on a Friday morning with the particular combination of warmth and purpose that characterized how he introduced himself to people who had things he wanted to place. He came to the shop on a Tuesday. He looked at the Bentley, which was by now fully restored, standing in the bay with the deep blue paint compounded to the depth it had been built with. The chrome correct, the interior. Original leather, cleaned and conditioned rather than replaced, because the original leather was irreplaceable and correct, and still structurally sound, exactly as it had been in 1956. He walked around it twice. He opened the bonnet. He looked at the engine. He turned to Noah. "You understand what you have," he said. "I have an idea," Noah said. "I can place this at auction within 6 weeks," Cameron said. "Given the provenance, the service record, the ownership history, the mileage, I would conservatively estimate a hammer price between £600,000 and £700,000. After fees and commission, you're looking at somewhere around $900,000 to $1 million US. Noah looked at the car. "I'm not selling it," he said. Cameron looked at him. He had the expression of a man who had misread a situation and was recalibrating. "I understand if you want time to consider." "I've considered it," Noah said. "It's not for sale. A car of this value belongs to a man named Walter Foss," Noah said. "He gave it to me to fix. I fixed it. What I do with it is take it back to him and drive him in it one more time while he still can." Silence in the bay. Cameron looked at the car. He looked at Noah. He looked at Ada on the crate with Wren, who was watching the exchange with the impartial attention of a stuffed dog who had seen a great many things and judged none of them. "That's a significant amount of money to decline," Cameron said. "I know what it is," Noah said. Cameron was quiet for a moment. Then, and it was genuinely to his credit, he nodded. "All right," he said. He set a card on the workbench. "If you or Mr. Foss ever decide to sell, please call me." He left. The shop went back to what it was. Ada looked at Noah. "Were you going to sell it?" she said. "No," he said. She nodded. She looked at Wren. She said something to him in a voice too low to catch. Then she looked back up. "Wren says Walter will cry," she said, "when he sees it." Noah picked up a chamois from the workbench. He folded it once. "Probably," he said. "Is that okay?" she said. He thought about Maya. He thought about the wooden box in the closet. He thought about Eleanor's driving gloves on the workbench, worn at the palm, small hands, 40 years of summer drives. "Yeah," he said. "That's okay." He drove the Bentley to Lick Creek Road on a Saturday morning in May. Ada rode with him. She sat in the passenger seat with Wren on her lap and her window down 2 inches so the morning air came in. The Bentley moved the way a correct car moves when everything in it has been returned to what it was meant to be. Not silently, because an engine of this age and type was not silent, but with a composure that was its own kind of quietness. Walter was on the porch when they came up the gravel lane. He was standing, which cost him something, and he had his cane, and he watched the car come up the lane, the way a man watches something he had stopped believing he would see again. Noah parked at the end of the lane. He got out. He opened Ada's door and she came out with Wren. They walked to the porch. Walter came down the 2 steps very carefully. He walked to the car. He put his hand on the roof. He stood there with his hand on the roof, and he did not say anything for a long moment. And his jaw moved once in the way that jaws move when a man is keeping something in that does not want to be kept. Ada watched him. She was very still. Wren was under her arm. Walter bent at the waist, leaning on his cane, and he brought his face level with the driver's window. And he looked inside. He looked at the steering wheel. He looked at the leather. He looked at the instruments. He straightened up. He looked at Noah. "It's exactly right," he said. His voice was not steady. "It's exactly right," Noah said. "The Interiginal. I cleaned and conditioned it. Nothing replaced that could be saved." Walter nodded. He put his hand back on the roof. He stood there with his hand on the dark blue car in the May morning light. Ada stepped forward. She held up Ren. "Ren wanted to see it," she said, "because it's almost the same color as him." Walter looked at Ren. He looked at Ada. The thing he had been keeping in came forward, not violently, but with the certainty of something that had waited long enough. "Your dog," he said. His voice was rough. "Ren, he goes everywhere," Ada said. "Eleanor had a dog," Walter said. "A black lab. His name was Ren." He looked at the small black stuffed dog in Ada's arms. He looked at Ada. She named him after Renoir, the painter. Ada looked at Ren. She looked at Walter. "Mine's just Ren," she said. "I don't know why. He told me his name." Walter Foss looked at the 6-year-old girl and the black stuffed dog in the morning light outside his farmhouse, and he did not try to say anything for a moment. He opened the driver's door. "Will you drive me?" he said to Noah. "Just down the lane and back." "That's what I came for," Noah said. Walter lowered himself into the passenger's seat, slowly, with the care of a man for whom lowering himself was a decision. He settled. He put his hands on his knees. He looked forward through the windscreen at the gravel lane and the trees and the May light coming through them. Ada got in the back with Ren. Noah started the car. The straight six settled into its idle, and the sound of it filled the lane, and Walter closed his eyes for 3 seconds. Just 3, and then opened them. Noah drove down the lane. He turned at the end where the lane widened at the field gate. He drove back. He parked where he had parked before. He turned off the engine. The 3 of them sat in the Bentley in the silence of a May morning. The trees moved slightly. A bird made its sound somewhere in the field. Ada said, from the back seat, in the thoughtful voice she used when she had been working something out. It didn't go away. Walter turned to look at her. "Eleanor's car," Ada said. "In the painting it keeps going, and now it's still here too. It didn't go away." Walter looked at her for a long moment. "No," he said, "I suppose it didn't." He said it the way a man says something he has just understood for the first time, and that will take a long time to finish. Understanding. They sat in the car a little while longer. No one was in a hurry. The morning was fine. The lane was quiet. Ren sat on Ada's lap and looked out the window with his button eyes at the trees and the field, and the May light moving through everything. And the Bentley sat at the end of the gravel lane in Chatham County, with its engine ticking as it cooled. And it did not go away. Noah drove home later that morning. Ada in the back with Ren, the Bentley on the small trailer behind them. Ada was drawing something in her notebook. "What are you drawing?" he said. "The lane," she said, "and Walter and the car." "Is Ren in it?" "Ren's always in it," she said, with the certainty of someone for whom this required no explanation. He drove. The road went north. The morning was full and green, and the light came through the trees, in the way that May light does in that part of North Carolina, which is the kind of light that does not demand anything of you. He thought about the wooden box in the closet. He thought about Maya's handwriting on the lid. He thought about what Ada had said in the car. It didn't go away. He thought about that for a long time. That evening, after Ada was in bed with Ren on the pillow beside her, and the nightlight on and the house quiet, Noah went to the closet. He stood in front of it for a moment. He reached up to the shelf. He took down the box. He carried it to the kitchen table. He sat down. He looked at Maya's handwriting on the lid. Her name for him, the one she used. Just N in her large looping letters, because she had said his whole name was too far to travel when she needed him quickly. He sat with it for a moment. Then he opened it. He did not close it again that night. He sat at the kitchen table with what was inside it, and the kitchen light on, and the house quiet around him. And it was not easy, and it was also not the wrong time. It was maybe exactly the right time. The box stayed open on the table. The night went on. Somewhere down the hall, Wren kept his patient watch beside a sleeping child, and the Bentley sat on the trailer in the driveway, under the spring stars. Dark blue, the color of deep water at the edge of evening, going nowhere and staying exactly where it was.